In a world gone mad, only rationality and common sense can save it. It's Andrew and Jerry Save the World with your hosts, Andrew Langer and Jerry Rogers. And now, here's Andrew and Jerry.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World, episode 36, Andrew and Jerry Save the Radicals. And we'll get into that. Certainly, I'm Andrew Langer.
I'm Jerry Rogers.
And we've had this discussion. Do we want to hold off on who the radicals are, Jerry? Do we want to just launch right into this?
Well, I mean, think about this. Our listeners, who do you think we think the radicals are? It used to be, right, in the 40s and 50s and 60s and even into the 70s, the radicals were those marching for civil rights and demanding free speech, demanding liberty, protested
the dirty hippies.
Right, but they protested black churches being firebombed. They protested a big government draft. I mean, they were the contrarians.
I talk about this. It's funny you say that, Jerry, because in that way I've at least been consistent on all of this, because I talk about, especially when I was coming to my political education and sentience, I suppose it is. You know, I was a real student of the 1960s growing up.
I'm gonna Google that word, by the way.
Sentience, you know that word.
Well, what do I know?
It's that which separates us from the monkeys that came before us, Jerry. The spark of divinity within us all. But I was fascinated by the 60s, fascinated by protest music, fascinated by the civil rights movement, fascinated by hippies, et cetera, et cetera.
Me too. I remember once, because my mom is technically a baby boomer.
Yes.
My dad is not. But regardless, Mom, what did you do during the 60s? And she said, "What do you mean? I was having a family. I was raising you. I was on church on Sunday. We were helping our neighbors. What do you mean? Where was I?"
I was being an adult. But my point is, for me, and this was not. I guess it was what it came out in 71. The concept of won't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Isn't that true?
Yeah. But it was a situation in which I sort of realized that the great failure of the 1960s, and I came to this realization.
You hear it right here.
Really,
Andrew and Jerry.
The Clinton administration, when the Clintons came in, it was sort of it all came real for me. So the 1960s was about pushing back against, in some ways, the evil immorality of big government agencies that were being used to harass and oppress political opponents.
Consumerism.
But the failure of the left was that they thought that they could replace the overarching, all-powerful, abusive government with a benign, loving, federal government big power of their own.
Meet the new boss. He's
same as the old boss.
And so, I mean, again, just to reveal, so if in the 60s and 70s, in the 50s, the civil rights movement, these were countercultural.
Yes.
These were movements trying to conserve something, trying to conserve liberty for all men, conserve free speech. And today, who's the radical? Who's pushing up against the government? A corporate America.
And let me
pushes against the media today.
Let me add to this, right? Because there was a real sea change. I mean, for a while, right, you had anti-government types and the Sagebrush Rebellion types and the property rights types. They were sort of operating behind the scenes. I know a lot of those people. But really, it was the 2016 election that really brought out this idea of there's the establishment and now the leftist establishment and the anti-establishment folks.
Right.
And the concept of the disruptors. And we've been over this. This is fertile ground for us. So, Jerry, here, go ahead and you can now do the big reveal. Who are the radicals?
Well, the radicals today are those who are standing for family, for faith, for freedom, for the rule of law. In other words, it's working class Americans, average Americans, and to the extent that we could put an ideology on it, it's conservatives.
It's funny. It's I used to talk a lot of time about the vast libertarian middle. And really what it is, it's some of it has to do with the concept of the Leave Us Alone coalition that Grover Norquist writes about. But it really is sort of this vast just working class middle, just average everyday Americans. We used to talk about the concept. Well, it gets into the issue of the Leave Us Alone coalition, right? We did a whole show years ago called "You Will Be Made to Care," right? One of the straws that broke the camel's back was when Vice President Pence, before he became before he was inaugurated, going and seeing Hamilton and being hectored at by the cast of Hamilton. Anyway, the point is, the reason why we're doing the show today here, there are a number of stories that we're going to talk about today, and we're not going to break it down into breaking news and the bottom line and all that. We don't have an expert coming on today.
I'm sitting right here.
Oh yes, but the point is that there are two stories that bookend. There are a couple of other ones in there. But I wanted to open it up because I just had a discussion on Twitter with somebody about this today. We had the story that broke a week ago Friday, right, Jerry? It was a week ago Friday that this pro-life activist, Mark Houck, had how many FBI agents showed up at his house?
I mean, 30.
30.
And we know it was FBI. We know they had their guns out, pointed at the heads of the children and the man and the family in his house.
We're going to get into the fact set of that story. I think we talked about it a little bit last week.
Sure.
When we had Tim Graham on, but it's worth revisiting. And that story's gotten enough pushback that one would have expected, one would have hoped that the DOJ would learn from this lesson. But no, what they are learning is that they can keep this in the news. So we have the announcement yesterday from the DOJ that 11 activists, pro-life activists in Tennessee, were also indicted under the FACE Act yesterday, this time for an incident that happened about 18 months ago.
Right.
Jerry, go ahead. I know you want to talk
and
about
also, I mean, again, we'll see the facts of the case, but this FACE law, what it does is it protects the clinic, the abortion clinic, from the entrances being blocked, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
So if you are away from the entrance and you're praying, that is not in violation of the federal law. It's not trespassing. Yeah. And yet, again, the facts as they come out, these 11 are not guilty of that.
Well,
of that federal statute.
I'm trying to find the precedent because I'm under the impression that the precedent, at least in Pennsylvania, is certainly that Mark Houck shouldn't have been charged. So we'll get into this. But
right, the precedent, though, because it's a federal statute, whatever precedent there is, because it has to be the same in Tennessee as it is in.
No, not necessarily. So I'll explain that in a second. So the fact set with Mark Houck is that Mark Houck goes to this abortion clinic. He sets up a card table nearby and he counsels women. Right. And over the course of the many years he's been doing this, he's been traveling several hours to this clinic. He has brought his son on occasion, and there is a pro-abortion activist who had started harassing his son, and not just yelling at his son, but also getting into the son's face and using homophobic pejoratives about the father to the son. And finally, the guy, the pro-choice activist, the pro-abortion activist, got in the son's personal space, and the father intervened. The son's like 12 years old, and knocked the guy to the ground. And the pro-choice, pro-abortion activist filed assault charges against Mark Houck. By the way, that's always what he's wanted. He wanted to, he wanted to draw the foul, to use the basketball parlance.
Right.
And essentially induce Mark Houck to get so frustrated that he would do something, that he would act. And the prosecutor, the local prosecutor in Philadelphia, threw out the charges. I don't know if it was thrown out of court, Jerry, or the prosecutor dropped the charges. Either way, Mark Houck was cleared of this, and within a week, the DOJ began to investigate under the FACE Act. It took several months for that to happen, for the charges to be dismissed or dropped or whatever. And so then the DOJ immediately begins, and something I should have read, that's what I should have read, was the letter that the attorney sent, because that gives the precedent. So the way it works is Federal precedent, it's like a pyramid scheme. I don't mean that in the negative way. But what happens is that if there is a decision in Pennsylvania, in the Federal District Court of Pennsylvania regarding the application of federal law, that precedent applies in Pennsylvania. If the Court of Appeals for the circuit that governs Pennsylvania, it governs not just Pennsylvania, but all of the states within that circuit. Right. And then if it goes to, so Tennessee is not in the same circuit as Pennsylvania, and I don't have the circuit map in front of me.
I understand. Right.
Yeah. I'm explaining to our listeners. And so you have this situation in which it's very clear. It is abundantly clear. The Biden administration and the Democrats generally, they see what's happening in the midterm elections. And I'm not saying this is going to be a Republican wave. I don't think it's going to be a wave. I think I think the Republicans are going to most likely gain control by very slim margins in both the House and Senate. But the Democrats know that they have an opportunity. If they can draw out as much of their base as possible, they have the opportunity to not just blunt whatever Republican gains might be had, but actually to be able to hold on to both the House and Senate, which is what they really want in the end. It's not just about power, but it's about narrative, right? They want to keep control for the power, right, but they also want to be able to say, see, the American people trust Joe Biden, blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry, Jerry, go ahead.
And again, this is blatant that the Biden administration, the Democrats, are leveraging the Department of Justice, again, as a political tool, so they can issue press releases. This plays well with the pro-choice and the base of the party. And also how it's reported is never friendly to the pro-life cause. Right. So whatever media this generates is also going to be presented to help Biden and the Democrats win the midterms.
Right, because as we talk about narratives, and it's funny because John Lott's got some great pieces. John Lott from the Crime Prevention Center has some great pieces recently about the DOJ and the FBI undercounting the instances in which a good guy with a gun stops crimes that apparently it could be it's massively being undercounted. But it allows, again, narratives to be manipulated in such a way, right, Jerry? Where when the president talks about violent extremism on the right and radicalization of the right, and they talk about sort of domestic terrorism and the threats to order and the threats to democracy, this is the kind of statistic they point to. They can say, oh, well, we've had cases in these districts, we've indicted dozens of people on this.
And then also
And
also remember this, we have heard reports now that the FBI, charged by the Biden administration and by the Department of Justice, they're looking for white nationalist terror threats. This is the boogeyman that the FBI is trying to find. And so what happens, these 11 indicted for essentially praying outside of an abortion factory are now going to be included in the numbers of extremist white nationalists that the FBI then gives out to the media to show the false narrative that somehow the real threats to our democracy are coming from the right.
And this is what gets me here. And I got into this a Twitter discussion. I was telling Jerry before we went on the air. I wasted way too much time this morning dealing with some guy who just didn't. The case was made by one of our most steadfast followers on social media, James King, also a listener to the show. He tweeted out yesterday in response to something that I'd done Molly Hemingway had tweeted out about this indictment out of Tennessee. And I tweeted out in support of this. James tweeted out in reply to me that whoever runs for president on the Republican side, should pledge to give clemency to these individuals. To which some snarky anonymous jerk on Twitter said, well, why is it that the party of law and order has to issue so many, clemency and pardons, so much clemency and pardons? To which I responded, and I frankly was annoyed as all get out. about the just what's the word I'm looking for? The absurdity of this person's premise. I said
the fundamental misunderstanding of what the pardon is for also.
Because the DOJ is thoroughly politicized, you jackass. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, it's like, and then of course I then have to sit down and explain, and this person wanted to go down the rabbit hole, Jerry, the rabbit hole of, because I brought up the issue of the DOJ is doing this, right? The DOJ is prosecuting people under the FACE Act, right? A guy.
And let me just comment real quick on that. So some of our listeners might be saying, well, you know what? They're innocent. They'll have their day in court. But think about what this does to their home life, their finances, the organizations to which they belong. Think about what it does in terms of disruption for their children and their families. But also think of how this disrupts the ability to have a free exchange of ideas.
Well, yeah,
this is made so pro-lifers won't say anything. This is look, right. Not to switch subjects, go back to where you're going, but just recently, the major medical associations has asked the Department of Justice to investigate those who question so-called gender affirming care. And this is outrageous.
And Jerry, you raise an excellent point, which is this issue, right? Because again, it gets down to the issue of which side. Brilliant. And I don't know if you meant to come around here with this, but
if it's brilliant, I meant it.
Yes, we're going to do a lot of figure eights today. We're going to come back to a lot of these things overall, because remember, what we're talking about here is how the concept of who is the radical has changed over time. Right. It used to be that the left loved a good debate, and they wanted to make sure that you can have this debate and discussion, and in the right context, right? Again, it has to do with it, but in the public square, having the open and free exchange of ideas. Now the left does not want that. The left wants just the opposite. The left are the ones who are who are talking about deplatforming. Popped up in my Facebook memories today, or maybe it was yesterday, that it was like 5 years ago when Black Lives Matter showed up at William and Mary to shut down an ACLU event, an American Civil Liberties Union event. And we now know that the ACLU is taking free speech and free expression secondary to their advocacy on diversity, inclusion, and equity. And so, you have this situation where you want to stifle and shut down. And I know it's going to sound hypocritical as I talk about the folks who go and protest at Supreme Court justices' houses. But the point is that there is a reason why we have a federal law on the books, so that justices and federal judges are not harassed and intimidated at their homes. There's an appropriate time. Not only is there an appropriate time and place to debate outside of the court the issues that are being debated inside the court, but the whole point is to have a free and open exchange of ideas in the court. And if one side is intimidated, whether or not it's by the force of arms or it's by the force of the mob outside of their homes, it has the same chilling effect on the free exchange of ideas. Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, and again, this is evidence, right, of the DOJ, of the Biden administration, of being politicized, because these protesters, these agitators, under other circumstances in a different context, you and I would support their right to protest, even if they're wrong. But there is a federal law that protects the private homes of justices. And this was a clear violation. And the Department of Justice, no arrests, no raids.
The only reason to right. So you can have a protest in front of the you can have a protest at the Supreme Court. You can have a protest on the grounds of the United States Capitol. You have a protest on the grounds of the mall. You can have a protest anywhere. When you take a protest to someone's house in particular, when you harass a member of the cabinet or a senior member of an administration, you are doing that so that you are intimidating them into change their behavior or resigning, right? You want them to take an action. You want that so that they don't do the job the way that they want to do their job. That's the only reason why, right? You're not protesting at the Supreme Court justice's home because because you just want to inform them generally about an issue. right? Remember, all of this stuff happened because the Dobbs decision leaked. And let me note that it's been almost a half a year since the Dobbs decision leaked, and we still don't know who leaked it. And we were supposed to get
a new Supreme Court term.
Yeah, we were supposed to hear from the Chief Justice and the Supreme Court Marshal Service by the start of the term, and we haven't.
Let me comment. Let me just comment on.
And then I want to come back to this, Jerry, because I want to get into something that this Twitterer tweeted at me.
Sure, but again, just for clarity, again, the evidence of the DOJ being politicized and weaponized is that a clear violation of the law.
Yes,
pro-abortion advocates were investigated. They weren't arrested. There were no raids on their homes. Their friends and families and organizations are safe. Now you have a man well distanced from the entrance of an abortion clinic, and he's literally protecting his son from a pro-abortion advocate, and he was raided. Again, yes. This is, again, and to our listeners, don't make the mistake to say this is double standard. Don't make the mistake to say this is hypocrisy. Those things might be true, but what this really is hierarchy. They are the, they're put into the Downton Abbey. They are the aristocrats.
Yes.
And they will live by their own rules.
The aristocrat.
And those rules, the rules for us don't apply to them. That's hierarchy.
I'm making a joke, by the way, because there's a very famous dirty joke called the Aristocrats.
Of course, yes. I got your joke. I got it.
A group of abortion rights protesters walks into a theatrical agent's office. I expect this. It's so funny. I'm sorry. I don't want to digress. I want to come back to something you said, Jerry, just about Mark Houck, because you said something, and I wanted to reinforce what you said. And it's funny because it also gets into the question that I'm going to ask about Larry Hogan and Glenn Youngkin. When you are, you're right. These people may very well be acquitted. The cases may be dismissed. They may not be. That's a chance that they're taking. And they may not have to pay their own legal bills. They may have some pro bono legal foundation depending.
But think about this. But think about if you're a contractor. Think about if you have. There are many organizations that have what they call in labor law moral clauses. Sure. And so if I have a cleaning business and I have a hospital, hospitals in my business, all hospitals have these moral clauses to contracts. Well, I'm indicted by the feds. We cancel your business. Jerry, there's a ripple effect here.
I'm even going a step back here and just talking about the family life.
Of course.
If the SWAT team shows up at this house and takes the father off, a father who, by the way, let's be really clear here also, a father whose lawyer was in communication. I mean, this is again getting back to the Donald Trump situation. Lawyers in communication with the Justice Department, and says, hey, we don't think you're right on the law, but if you're going to go forward with this, we'll come in.
Yeah.
We'll surrender. No. They made an affirmative decision to send the 30-member SWAT team out to this guy's house. That is incredibly traumatic for the kids, and probably the wife too, but certainly the kids. And so there is this overall effect there. I want to go here, Jerry, because this is the other thing that came up, which is, you talk about time and resources, right? You're someone who is indicted under this. You have to spend your time and your energy. You're going to lose wages. You might lose business over this. The question got asked, which is, well, there are laws about protesting, about not protesting at people's homes on the books in Maryland and Virginia. So why didn't Glenn Youngkin and Larry Hogan go and do this? Because it's not their job. I mean, not only is there federal law that supersedes state law on this, but why should the people of Maryland spend law enforcement resources and court resources when the federal government is not doing its job? This is the federal government's job. The Department of Justice's job is to enforce federal law. And by the way, there are greater penalties for this than sort of just dispersing the protests at these homes. Anyway, go ahead.
But here's, it's hard to wrap your head around this, but here's the thing. Police make arrests on federal charges all the time. So for instance, in New York City, if there is a suspect on federal gun charges, New York City police can arrest.
No.
So
They can detain, right? They can detain them, but they're not going to be arrested until they're charged by someone in federal law enforcement.
All right, but regardless, you can use local law enforcement. Just back up for a second. So I'm not going to give Larry Hogan an out. It is against, by the way, state law in Maryland, there's state law that prohibits this kind of protesting. And Montgomery County, the county where these justices lived, have specific ordinances that don't allow for protest outside of a public official's home. And so Larry Hogan, again, maybe Youngkin is different. Hogan absolutely could have sent in state police and refused.
Yeah, but my point is, again, it's a situation in which it starts with the federal government, not the DOJ not doing its job, right? It would be one thing if we sort of understood that the DOJ, we know the DOJ is not going to, right? There's not going to be some point, because these protests started happening almost 6 months ago. We know there's not going to be a point a year from now where there are going to be indictments of these protesters under 18 USC section 1503 and 1507. We know that's not going to happen, that there's not going to be some long investigation, which is how it should, it's how it should be done. The DOJ has to do its job.
Yeah. Again, just so our audience gets this, there's a history of Democrats, and I'm sure other politicians in our nation's history, but the fact of the matter is, the Obama administration weaponized the Department of Justice
and the FACE Act.
And this is the model. So yes, I know it's only 6 years ago, but 7 years ago, but Donald Trump wasn't a front runner, wasn't even on the radar when the presidential for 2016 started to kick up. A guy named Chris Christie was everyone was looking at him.
Yes. And
he wanted to run up his score in New Jersey re-election, red governor, kind of like say it as it is governor, kind of like Trump before Trump.
Yeah.
And so he ran up the score in Jersey to prove that he could win in blue districts. Well, the Obama administration doesn't want to run against Christie in 2012. They're scared to death. And so what do? They take the Department of Justice to investigate what was eventually was called Bridgegate, where a federal statute was used to charge. Of course, the governor was skated in terms of he never had to defend himself, but he sacrificed 2 aides.
Yeah, and
they did not break the statute. Experts said that the DOJ was wrongly applying this law in order to hurt the governor. But ultimately, who and the governor was hurt. Where's Chris Christie today? Is he on Dancing with the Stars? No one knows, right?
Yeah.
And so
he's on the beach, Jerry, sitting in that beach chair.
So Obama was able to use the DOJ to get rid of Chris Christie. But then again, the real though for the rest of us, these 2 people were thrown into jail.
Yes.
A mother of 4.
Yeah.
And it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they were vindicated.
Right.
But however, they had to go through years and years and years of legal persecution.
Bob McDonnell here in Virginia, right? Bob McDonnell, again, another front runner going into 2012. Right. He was the boy governor.
And the Obama administration
went after him
DOJ
on corruption charges that were eventually thrown out.
Right. And so
the concept. Hold on, I want to say this. Remember, when you are alleging a quid pro quo, I'll give you something if you give me something in return. You actually have to do something when you get something, right? And they could never, despite the fact that they never actually said that Bob McDonnell did anything, he was convicted under corruption.
Right, and again, this is an abuse of the law. It's really the Department of Justice acting untethered from the law. But going back to our Andrew and Jerry Save the Radicals. Who are the radicals today? It's the public interest law firms who are pushing against this overreach, politicizing everything at DOJ, at the IRS, at myriad other the EPA. My goodness! And so, who are the radicals? The ones who are pushing back and writing about it and exposing it. And very often, those radicals, the new radicals, today's new radicals, they are canceled. They are banned. They are thrown off Twitter. They're given warnings at work.
I want to shift gears for a second, talking about radicals and how things change and the different mindsets between conservatives and progressives, or conservatives and liberals. This is a new YouGov poll. I guess it's not so new, but it was, I don't know, the surveying was done in the summertime. It was just released in the last couple of days, and it's about mental health. Have you seen this, Jerry? This is great. It essentially says that all right, specifically and strictly speaking, it says that conservatives are much more satisfied with their mental health than liberals are. That liberals are far more dissatisfied with their current mental state over here by substantial portions here. In terms of both ideology and political party, let me pull this up here. Conservatives enjoy I'm going to circle this. YouGov, satisfaction battery, mental health. How satisfied are you with your mental health? Are you completely satisfied? Blah, blah, blah. And it goes on. In terms of completely satisfied with your mental health, conservatives enjoy a 23-point advantage over liberals, and Republicans enjoy a 20. That's it. Enjoy a 16-point advantage over liberals here, which is astounding to me. So it's not just about happier, but it's about sanity and who is. And not that I want to stigmatize mental health.
Well, no, but think about this, Andrew. Yeah. Think about the miserable progressive. Right. They are unhappy about everything. They are victimized by everything. And again, in a way, the show is Andrew and Jerry, save the radicals. Let's identify who the new Puritans are.
Yeah.
It is the hardcore left. It's progressives. They are the ones who want to banish. They're the ones who want to curtail rights. They want to, if the law doesn't match what they want. I mean, think about, Democrats support the court insofar as the court supports the Democrats, right?
Yes.
And if you get decisions that Democrats don't like, well, then the court, Norm Ornstein,
yeah,
from AEI has a piece out where he calls the justices, the conservative justices on the court, he calls them political hacks.
But okay,
but here's the thing:
what the hell is going on, Jerry? What the hell is going on with AEI? Can you explain this to me, please? I mean, is it just the hold that the Cheneys have over AEI? I mean, is that what it is? It's the pro-Cheney team.
I think this. I mean, if AEI's leadership,
I don't want to get. Listen, I know you've had a long-standing relationship with folks at AEI, but I just don't understand this.
Look, I don't think the relationship with the Cheneys moves AEI one way or the other, and the fact that AEI is still has a solid relationship with that family, that's history, and so I forgive them that. But broaden your question though. Where have any of the big idea factories, where have any of them been? Where is the GOP trade policy? Where is the GOP tax policy?
Yeah, but
where's the GOP healthcare
policy? These are separate issues. I mean, we can get into the discussion about. But time out. But I want to come back to this, because this is AEI, the American Enterprise Institute, a stalwart conservative organization for decades that is now openly attacked. We finally have a conservative majority on the court, and here is AEI attacking the conservative majority on the court, which up until 8 years ago, up until Donald Trump became president or ran for president, AEI would have been applauding all of this.
And again, AEI would say that Norm has his own opinions, and
sure,
and we respect his academic freedom and that sort of thing.
Between Norm Ornstein and AEI and Jonah Goldberg and the National Review,
right?
Jonah finally
exactly
left,
right. But here's the thing, sure, that really is at the heart of your question, and that is there are too many in the center right movement who aren't the radicals. They are more the appeasers. They're the Vichy conservatives.
Sure,
those who somehow Trump broke their mind and they are defending things today that they would consider outrageous only but 4 or 5 years ago. I'll give you an example. David French.
Yes, a prime example.
Who writes now for the Dispatch, but was a National Review guy. He was considered to run for president. He was he
ran for president,
right. But this was a principled man, someone who I read. I think we might have had him on our programs, but something broke. And this week he writes a defense of gender affirming surgeries. Now, it's more nuanced than what I just said, but nonetheless, he says that it's wrong. He says that people aren't transgendered. A boy is a boy, a girl is a girl, period. But then he goes on to say, though, in loving families, that if the parent wants to allow the 12-year-old to have gender affirming surgery or hormone therapy, well, then they should have at it. And I'm thinking to myself, and forgive what I'm going to say, but because it's harsh, but so he supports a loving parent's right to mutilate a child's body.
Remember, we went down this road. The big thing about 20 years ago, right? It wasn't a mainstream issue, but it was something that talked about. The left was all over female circumcision, anti-female circumcision. This was an abusive, barbaric practice that was being practiced in some nations in Africa. And the United States to take a strong stand to make sure that when people from these countries come to the United States, that we make sure that no girl can be mutilated in that way. And yet this is where we are.
And again, who's the radical here, and who is the Puritan here? And what I mean by that is this.
Sure.
The radical will say, no, even in a loving family, the state can't allow the parents to mutilate a child.
Right.
Number one. Right. And number two, so what, the parent gives consent. So what if you decide this on a 13-year-old girl who then, when she's 23, regrets what happened?
Right.
And what does it mean 10 years later, 15 years later, when they regret and they say, well, my parents consented? Again, a child cannot consent to this. Right. And so giving parents, again, this power to mutilate is insane.
Well, this gets, I mean, right. I remember in the 80s and into the 90s, there were all of these stories about Munchausen's by proxy syndrome and, moms who were pretending that their kids were sick and giving them all kinds of treatments because they loved the attention that they were getting. I mean, and listen, I'm going to say this.
That's interesting. Anthony.
Yeah, that there is some parallel here.
Well, there was a story this week. One of the old boy bands, I forget which one, New Kids or, one of those boy bands has a child, 9.
Yeah.
Who is now identified as transgendered, and they're celebrating this. And I'm thinking to myself, the child is 9. That's 4th grade.
Yes.
At 4th grade, the grown-ups and the parents are supposed to mold the child.
Right.
I mean, we're not supposed to take seriously what a 9-year-old says when it comes to these types of decisions.
That kids go through phases. And Bill Maher has a great piece on this. Right, that not every kid can become a firefighter, astronaut, cowboy.
Right.
If a girl at age 9, because of a host of reasons, decides she wants to be a tomboy for some time in her life, that's fine. If some a kid boy wants to play with dolls and pretend to be a mommy.
But regardless, though, remember,
my point is that doesn't mean that it's going to be permanent.
Of course, yeah. But even more than that, though, it's the parents' job. We are supposed to mold. We are supposed to mold our children's sexuality, everything about them, their intellect, their soul.
Well, and this is why, right? You and I have talked about this. This is why you have in urban liberal progressive centers in America, the coastal elites or wherever else. That's why in these urban centers, you always have the self-identification of young people as being LGBTQIA skews massively upward vis-a-vis the rest of the population. And it's not because kids are afraid of the homophobic reaction of their parents in Peoria, Illinois, or Terre Haute, Indiana, or wherever, right? It's not because of that. It's because, you know, you have parents who are molding their kids in one way in New York City,
Right.
and parents who are molding their kids in a completely different way. I will say this. I had a very nice time at my high school. I went to my high school homecoming, had a wonderful time. I ran into somebody that I consider a mentor, or someone, you know, in terms of radio and media that I have emulated in the past. Saw this is not a problem. So my high school, Jerry, weirdly enough, this is going to say a lot about me. My high school didn't have cheerleaders when I was in high school, because the woman who was in charge of the school didn't like the concept, and it's a whole thing. Eventually, they got a new athletic director who had played in the NFL, who was an alumnus, and he decided to pull the school into the modern school spirit. There's a whole point to the story. They introduced cheerleaders. I don't have a problem with male cheerleaders, right? I've known male cheerleaders, you know, at my daughter's high school here in Virginia. But I have a problem with a male cheerleader.
Just for the record,
wearing a cheerleader skirt.
I stepped on your thing.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
But you're right. No problem with male cheerleaders. I was a joke that I played football in high school. I wasn't a cheerleader. But you make this point. Yes.
And I knew guys in college who were male cheerleaders just because they wanted to. Now, they were all friend zoned, but they like touching the cheerleaders.
All right, stop.
Yes.
But again, the bottom line is that we are supposed to mold our children, raise them, and you have parents just abdicating. A 9-year-old. What if the 9-year-old said to you that, well, I really believe that ice cream is good for me, and so all I want to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner is
I identify this ice cream as a salad,
as healthy.
Yes.
No, ice cream's, well, if everyone can have their own truth, and they have to be true to their authentic self, well, my authentic self doesn't want to eat anything healthy.
Jerry, I mean, we've talked about this. It's the same reason why. I mean, for whatever reason now, you can go to the DMV and you can select other on your driver's license in terms of your gender. But I can't identify as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed 25-year-old guy. I'm a dark-haired, dark-eyed, fat 51-year-old. And I can't identify, because this is the objective. There's the objective reality. And for whatever reason. And so now here's the point, right? Again, bringing it back, doing the figure eight. We are now radicals for wanting to say that there is objective reality.
Yeah.
That is an insane level of Kafkaism. I mean, it really is. The idea that we are now at a point where if we say this and we speak these plain truths, these self-evident truths, that we are considered somehow radical.
Right.
It's amazing to me.
We are a threat to democracy. We are insurrectionists.
So now with that in mind, I want to play this. Let me find this here. Hold on.
While you're finding it, again, just to this idea of what evidence of a politicized DOJ. Well, you have these January 6th, in some instances, they're charged with trespassing, first offense, and they've been thrown into jail. Some have been in solitary confinement. And Andrew, just in the last couple of weeks, we have this couple from Johns Hopkins who selling secrets.
I want to come back to that. That I want to spend a whole bunch of time talking about.
My point is, they were arrested and released on the same day.
Yes.
So don't tell me that the DOJ is not politicized.
Arrested. Hold on. Okay, you're absolutely right. So before I play this, because you and I didn't get a chance to talk about this story because it broke on Thursday, and it broke, I think, while we were on the air. Let me stop this. Stop the share. We'll come back to Joe Biden identifying as everybody and their brother.
In other words, lying.
Yes. So there's a couple. She is a professor of anesthesiology at Johns Hopkins. I think she is of Russian extraction. He is a major in the United States Army who at various points in time during his career was identifying as a woman. So what they call MTF, transgender. Went to the military's medical school in Bethesda, served, got promoted. But really, according to sources who were contemporaries of him in the military, he was really more interested in being the trans army doctor than being a doctor. That was sort of his industry. So they reached out to the Russian embassy. She did, the wife, Lady Macbeth, reached out to the Russian embassy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Reached out to the Russian embassy with an offer to sell military information or give military information to the Russians. Now, we don't know how this got in the hands of the FBI. But it did. So either the Russians gave over the information, which is doubtful, or the National Security Agency taps every phone call into the Russian embassy, which they should be doing. Either way, the FBI was tipped off that this had happened, and an FBI agent posing as a Russian reached out to the family. They had several meetings with the wife, at least one meeting with the husband. Secrets were passed, military information was passed, information about American military medical preparedness, information about soldiers stationed at Fort Bragg. Now, Fort Bragg, for those of you who don't know, is where not only do we have airborne Rangers, but it's where Delta Force is. So special operations are there, and information about spouses, medical information about spouses. This happened in August, by the way. So here we are. It's just a couple of months later. The DOJ can turn around and prosecute very quickly when they want to. This couple is prosecuted, or they are indicted, not indicted for espionage, not indicted for treason, though the wife said that she was loyal to Russia, and the husband talked about joining the Russian army. Now, we're not at war with Russia, but Russia is at war with somebody that we're supplying military aid to. He wanted to join the Russian army. He said he'd be a little more uncomfortable. No. They're charged with conspiracy, and they're charged with violations of HIPAA. And now I don't know if there was a 30 SWAT-clad FBI agents who showed up at the house, but they were released the same day with ankle bracelets on. You talk about double standards. This is emblematic of it. I'm sorry, Jerry, go ahead.
And again, there's lots of political reasons why they would do this, right? The January 6th commission, this show trial, is important to the Democrats' midterm plans. And they know they're going to lose the House. So they lose the House, the commission goes away. And so this is critical to their push.
Right.
And if there is a espionage story, Johns Hopkins, a transgendered army officer, his wife, it has all the ingredients for a sustained story into the next election,
right?
Which completely, how can the January 6th committee, how can the Jamie Raskins or the Liz Cheneys say that this guy who was led into the Capitol and kind of walked around a little bit and then walked out of the Capitol, he's been in jail for 6 months, and he's only charged with trespass. So they wouldn't be able to do this
for many months. I don't know how many months she got. The woman who never went into the Capitol was just outside on the Capitol grounds. So she refused to leave the Capitol grounds when they tried to clear it, wearing a Captain America suit. She is convicted. She's going to jail. I mean, this is amazing to me.
And again, Andrew and I are on the record that this January 6th mob attack on the Capitol was a horrendous day in our history. We've talked about that. But the fact of the matter is that you have the DOJ punishing these again, trespassers. You might not like their intent, but the fact of the matter is these are low-level crimes, and yet there has been a political persecution, and these two aren't even indicted on treason.
Let me read this, because this was in the Dallas Morning News 3 days ago. Mickey Larson Olson, 53, of Abilene, Texas, was sentenced to 6 months in jail. Texas woman who was charged, who charged the U.S. Capitol dressed in the Captain America costume, then fought law enforcement trying to clear the scene. She joined an enormous crowd on the west side of the Capitol, but she never went in. She never went into the Capitol. She gets 6 months. 6 months in jail. Frequent and hard to miss presence at Donald Trump rallies across the country, where she dresses in red, white, and blue Captain America style costumes and drives a red car covered in conspiratorial and Donald Trump supporting stickers. So essentially, she was convicted. Right, she was convicted of trespass. Right, she was there. She didn't go into the Capitol, but she got 6 months because she's a Donald Trump supporter.
Oh, that's exactly right. Yeah. And also, again, this false narrative, this gaslighting that somehow January 6th, these MAGA people are a threat to democracy. Look, big news today or this week, depending upon when you're listening to us. The Democrats are moving forward with their plan in terms of the next 5 weeks, election days in 5 weeks. The plan was to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act, to talk about the green energy.
Gas prices coming down.
But that was the plan.
Yeah.
And someone pulled the plug on that this week. And now the plan is MAGA Republicans are a threat to democracy, and they're gonna run with that. And again, the media hands this to them.
Right.
And anything that's counter to that, like this trans Army officer, his wife engaged in treason, although not indicted on treason, this has to get off the front pages because it interferes with the real threat are the MAGA Republicans.
This. There has not been hide nor hair of this story. And by the way, not a national story either. This was a DC local story. The only real news coverage I saw, well, there was a CNN story on it, but WMAR did a story on it because it was happened in Maryland, and she happened to be a professor at Hopkins. But story is gone. There is no mention of this story anymore, which is just crazy. In fact, that may be why I need to write a piece about stuff. But you talk about this. I'm going to go here. I want to play this clip from Joe Biden. Joe Biden. You talk about lack of objective reality. How can you have an objective reality when the leader of your party is saying this?
I got raised in the black church. He knows I'm not kidding.
I got my education for real in the black church. And that's not hyperbole, it's a fact. I probably went to shul more than many of you did. You all think I'm kidding. He can tell you I'm not. I was sort of raised in the Puerto Rican community at home, politically. I just have one thing to say.
Oh, and this is when he plays the music. We don't need to play that. Anyway, but you're right, Jerry. You said this early on. I don't remember if you said it on the air. He was a truck driver. His house burned down. What else? I mean,
he said he was arrested
in South Africa,
trying to visit Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
He says that he was on the front lines of the civil rights movement. He talks about all kinds of experiences, events that never occurred.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't chalk this up to Joe Biden being senile, mentally infirm. There are other things. This is just
he was Joe Biden to play baseball at Navy, but Roger Staubach beat him out.
Yes.
I mean, again, some of this, I guess, if he was younger, this is kind of political hyperbole. It's kind of fun. You exaggerate to make a point.
Sure.
Kind of blarney. But with him, it's actually ghoulish. Because as he's talking about how he's everything, I'm black, I'm Puerto Rican, I'm a truck driver, I identify as all these things. At the same time, he's in Florida, and he has to give a political dig to the governor and says, "Oh, Ron DeSantis believes in climate change now." And again, to our theme, who are the radicals? Are the radicals the scientists who push back against this kind of politicized environmental movement? They're the radicals. The Puritans are the ones who won't have any debate, won't allow for any counter arguments, won't won't really examine or re-examine the data, won't look at other science in terms of the rotation of the earth. My point is that climate change, the issue of climate change is something science still needs to discover and debate and experiment. But yet that side, if you are someone who's skeptical of the climate change movement, the Green New Deal, you are considered the other. You are considered not serious. And that's what they want to do, right? This is their new move.
Well, and remember,
Democrats,
right, we talk about this. We talk about the weaponization of law enforcement for political ends. Let's not forget that it was the last administration, not the last administration, the administration before last. It was the Obama administration and their hangers-on in law enforcement, right, state AGs, who were going after and trying to investigate, using the power of law enforcement, folks who were offering climate skeptic policy. You know, our good friends at the Competitive Enterprise Institute.
And here's the thing, the Democrats and the progressives, they don't believe simply that they're the best choice. They believe they're the only choice.
Right.
And that if you choose skepticism when it comes to climate change, when you choose to think differently about sexuality and these family issues and gender affirming and that sort of thing, that is unacceptable. And again, more and more people, average people, why speak out if you're going to be arrested or charged? Or, you know, again, you have the three biggest, most important physician advocacy groups: the American Medical Association, the American Association of Pediatrics, and then there's a third. Wrote a letter
probably the American Academy of Family Physicians, but I don't know offhand.
Wrote a letter to the Justice Department asking those who are against gender affirming to investigate.
Well, and again, going back to the folks who the teachers, so the National Association of School Boards, asking DOJ to investigate parents,
right? Exactly,
who are showing up at meetings.
So it's there's no more choice in politics. Again, the irony that they support democracy, but in reality they don't support democracy. They support the tyranny of the one choice.
I went through this. I'm gonna because I haven't talked about it in a while. I was keeping tabs during the Obama administration about this, and I talked a little bit about this with John Justice on Monday and sort of the narrative building. And the issue of when the media doesn't report on something, right, then it doesn't happen. So if the media doesn't report on this transgender major, offering up military health secrets to the Russians, then it doesn't happen.
Right.
And if they don't prosecute it, right, if something isn't prosecuted or it gets dropped or what have you, that's a whole nother part of this. And so, I'm reminded of back during the Obama administration when, so you had an organized political opposition movement, the Tea Party movement, which is just what it coalesced as. I mean, there was things that were starting to happen, and there were the massive bailouts. Anyway, it's a whole thing. So there were a myriad number of ways in which the Obama administration weaponized the power of government vis-a-vis the Tea Party movement. I was keeping tabs on this. And it wasn't just the IRS either slow walking or investigating organizations and using their power to do this, but it was also the White House wanting people to report on, countervailing information, any information that was counter to the narrative the White House was being put out. The White House was demanding these things. They had something called Attack Watch, sort of a rapid response operation that got shut down within the first 24 hours.
They wanted to know around the Thanksgiving table who was saying something negative about Obamacare.
Right. That's right. About Obamacare. This is not a joke, by the way. And it got to the point even where, and you can go and look this up. I could pull it up right now, but I don't want to take the time to do it. The Obama administration used the National Cancer Institutes, money that is supposed to be used to do research for cancer, to find a cure for cancer in America. They were using money for that to produce political reports to bash the Tea Party movement as being a front for big tobacco,
right?
Which is insane. And that's not a lie, but this was the level to which they were doing this. And you talk about this again, establishment versus radical, or establishment versus
there was a time in our history that if the government was acting, again, acting in this manner, there'd be the media. There is no media attention to the abuse of power in any of these
more to the
government
point,
agencies.
when you raise the issue of it being an abuse of power, you're passed off as a kook, and you are deplatformed on Twitter, or you are shadow banned on Twitter, or you're
think
dismissed
about
as
how this has changed.
Yeah.
Think about the 1970s. Think about Robert Redford in particular. Think about all the President's Men,
right?
And how the Washington Post, right, was looking out for government corruption. What about 7 Days of the Condor?
3 days. It's 7 Days of the Condor is the book. 3 Days of the Condor is the movie.
Right. Again, talking about
Parallax View with Warren Beatty.
A deep administrative state. There was a time when Hollywood was calling these things out.
Right.
Today, I just got word today that the big news in Hollywood is that Scooby-Doo, the next movie, Thelma comes out as a lesbian.
Which we already all knew. I mean, we already knew that she was a lesbian.
But the point is that Hollywood is now part of the woke culture. They don't push back.
We didn't talk about this. Are you? Because I had no real interest in seeing Bros. But I
didn't even know it was a movie until I was told that I was homophobic for not seeing the movie.
Yes, that's right.
A movie I never even knew about.
Right. And this is the point in the end. I mean, I remember seeing a really great gay rom-com. I'm sorry, I was going to make a joke about this. I probably shouldn't. I was going to make a joke about Philadelphia, which is a great movie. No two ways about it. Philadelphia is a great movie. But again, Tom Hanks deserved the Oscar.
The great Tom Hanks says now that it was wrong for him to play that role.
Right, which is insane. Again, because it's acting.
Yeah.
Right. It really. And we were just thinking about something over the weekend. We watched something where we're like, well, that couldn't be done today. Oh, we were watching a Saturday Night Live sketch in which Mike Myers was playing Judge Ito, and I'm like, okay, that couldn't be done today.
Well, I'm not even sure if the Sean Connery Jeopardy bit could go on today. Alex, I'll take the rapist.
I'll take your mother for
yeah.
Yes. No. I think that's true. I was doing a deep dive, watching Dana Carvey doing. I don't even remember this skit coming out. Dana Carvey as Johnny Carson as an expert lawyer assisting the O.J. Simpson legal team. It was very funny. But yeah, Mike Myers is Judge Ito. You couldn't do it today.
I hope that this is the last season.
Oh no. Listen, it's
horrible.
It's gonna
unwatchable.
It's gonna go to the 50th anniversary. Lorne Michaels will see it out to the 50th anniversary in 2 years. And then most likely he'll retire, and it may sort of die out. Tina Fey will come back as executive producer and it'll last a couple more years. I don't think it's good.
But I mean, there used to be, first of all, when we were kids, you had to watch it.
Okay, so here's the funny thing.
Right?
So, all right, there is a phenomenon that they talk about.
Okay.
Which is the best Saturday Night Live cast is the cast that was on when you were an adolescent, regardless of when you were an adolescent. It's a compelling theory. So if you're an adolescent in the 70s, the John Belushi cast, because all right, if you're an adolescent and you're somewhere between the ages of 13 and 17.
See, I think that those years for us were bad years.
Oh, I don't think so. No.
That was the Billy Crystal years.
All right. First of all, I love the Billy Crystal years. No, so because
I like Billy Crystal.
You're a couple of years older than I am. Now, to be fair, right?
I mean, when would I mean? So I was 14 in 1984, 85.
Okay, so that's right around. Yeah, that's still Billy Crystal, Christopher Guest.
Not good years.
Oh no! I love those years. I love those. Now, to be fair, right before Eddie Murphy came on, the first year that Lorne Michaels wasn't there. I'm sorry, I'm going to do a deep dive here, ladies and gentlemen. There's a woman named Jean Doumanian. Now, part of the problem, Jerry, also is that Lorne Michaels wasn't producing in 83, 84, and 84, 85.
When were the Murphy years?
So Eddie Murphy was 82, 83, 81, 82, and
all right.
I guess
so,
he left.
So I was in 7th grade.
Okay, yeah.
8th grade, right?
So remember, you had a really crappy year, one year where it was a guy named Charles Rocket, who later committed suicide, who also dropped the F-bomb on the air. Denny Dillon, who was terrible. Gilbert Gottfried, who hadn't come into his own. You had Robin Duke, and you had, I think Joe Piscopo had started, but Joe Piscopo was sort of carrying everything. But you had a woman named Jean Dumanian who was producing the show who didn't know anything about comedy. Then she got fired, and Dick Ebersol came in, and Dick Ebersol's got a new biography out. By the way, Jerry, that's who you should reach out to, is Dick Ebersol.
All right.
So Dick Ebersol came over from NBC Sports.
Yep.
He was a sports producer.
Yeah, I remember. Yes. That's
And
how I knew him.
And produced Saturday Night Live. He was married to Susan St. James.
That couldn't have worked out very well.
And then they brought in the All-Stars. So Billy Crystal, Christopher Guest, Harry Shearer. I love those shows. Tim Kazurinsky, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Brad Hall.
No, bad years.
Yeah, no, I love those. Even with Dick Ebersol producing.
So it got good again when the Adam Sandler crew came in.
Okay, so no, all right, so no, I think it was before then. So then you had the year where it was Robert Downey Jr., Anthony Michael Hall. Those are terrible. No,
Yes.
those are terrible,
Right.
Without a doubt. But then you get Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, Jan Hooks.
Oh, yeah, okay, yes.
Yeah, John Lovitz.
That was good. Yeah,
And so that's sort of, and I loved those. So that's late.
kind of like those are our college years, maybe.
Yeah, but and remember, that's when Lorne Michaels came back.
But my point is that, except for Murphy and the 80s were kind of a waste.
No. Again, because remember Dana Carvey coming, they came in 86.
All right, so
I think 82,
so the early 80s
I
were
think
bad.
See, I think 82 through 84 are good. 85, 86 was terrible.
Well, I guess
I got a story. Let me tell you a quick story. So I had a cousin who worked for NBC, and we went down. Me and my buddies. It's 85, the fall of 85. It's got to be right around now. I think it must have been either Veterans Day time or the Yom Kippur holiday. We go into the city, me and my idiot friends. We're allowed to go in on the train. We go to 30 Rock. My cousin takes us on a tour of the NBC studios. And then she says, okay, I'm going to go to lunch. You guys have fun. Don't get into trouble. And she lets us loose in NBC. So we make a beeline down to Studio 8H, where we're watching them rehearse Saturday Night Live. And it's terrible. It's Chevy Chase hosting. It's Anthony Michael Hall, Robert Downey Jr., Terry Sweeney, and Denitra Vance. Terry Sweeney, who the only imitation he could do was an imitation of Nancy Reagan in drag. And we watched, but we were fascinated watching this.
It was fun to watch.
Until we got kicked out. And then, by the way, we went over to CBS News because our other friend's dad worked over at CBS News. And we watched the Channel 2 News with Michelle Marsh. And I got to see Michelle Marsh without her makeup on. And that was something you never wanted to see.
So wrap up the Saturday Night Live rabbit hole. Who's the greatest player?
I will say Mike Myers.
Myers. The one who I would just laugh uncontrollably was Belushi.
Oh yeah, I mean, yes,
cheeseburger.
Yes, which is great. For me, so it would be, and I would put.
But Adam Sandler was awesome.
Phil Hartman was way up there for me. I mean, the great,
he carried that for a while. He was in some bad years.
So he did a sketch. My favorite sketch of all time is the Sinatra Group, which is the version of the McLaughlin Group with Frank Sinatra in the John McLaughlin role, and it's Sting as Billy Idol and Jan Hooks as Sinead O'Connor, and Mike Myers and Victoria Jackson as Stephen Eady. I mean, it is awesome. It is great. Yeah. So I will subject you. I'm watching. By the way, I'm listening to my new favorite podcast is the Fly on the Wall podcast with Dana Carvey and David Spade, and they interview people who are either guests or writers or whoever was associated with the show. And so last week's episode, they're doing a two-parter with Lorne Michaels every week, Jerry. They're doing whatever guest is on, invariably they have an impression of Lorne Michaels, which I don't know if you're aware of this, but Mike Myers' Dr. Evil character, that voice is based on Lorne Michaels. Right.
Awesome, yeah.
Yes, it's fantastic. I'm sorry. I know we took up all of that time.
We need to we need more from Mike Myers and even Dana Carvey.
Well,
something, a tour, a comedy tour.
So yeah, it would be great. For a while they weren't talking really, and I had never quite realized how far how sort of Mike Myers' background. Mike Myers he was born in Canada but raised in Liverpool, or sort of spent time in both England, or his parents were Liverpudlian.
Oh my God.
And so that's why he does such a spot on
Liverpudlian.
Yeah, Liverpool. Someone from Liverpool is called a Liverpudlian.
You know
Did you
what
not know this, Jerry?
I would say the guy who lives in Liverpool.
He's a Liverpudlian.
I love it.
And I have
that should be the name of the name of the show.
Yes, Andrew and Jerry.
By the way, did you see? Again, this is inside joke, but I sent years ago. We did a podcast, and our friend Michi was with us.
Oh, the Paul McCartney thing. Yes,
I said, Phil Collins was on on the Donahue show, and I saw this. And Phil Donahue asks Phil Collins, in music today, what are you hoping for? What would you like to see? And Phil Collins said, I'd like to see Paul McCartney write better songs.
Yes.
And I can't find the clip.
But you sent this great story.
There's a story out, I think, at Inside Hook now. You should go read it.
Yes.
Where Phil Collins just doesn't like Paul McCartney.
Yes, and he tells the story why, because Paul McCartney dissed him years ago, which is incredible.
But it's further evidence that I did see this clip.
No, yeah, without a doubt, man. And I wonder how fresh it was in his mind at that point in time. We're talking about the Donahue thing. Yeah. So by the way, a couple of housekeeping items, guys. Jerry was absolutely correct in his recommendations on Arthur Avenue. We had a wonderful trip there. Just fantastic. In fact, finally we finished the Italian bread. And then I finished the loaf. I went back and looked because I didn't realize. So the bakery that we went to, Terra Nova Bakery.
Yeah.
So it's only been around for about 50 years, but there was a bakery that preceded it by another 50 years. And so they bake all of their bread in these massive coal-fired ovens, which the Biden administration would want to get rid of, by the way.
And also, just as an aside, I went to Fordham University, and one of the greatest things of Fordham was you'd go outside at a certain certain time in the evening, and all those bakeries would be making bread, and it just filled the air. It was delicious. You'd look forward to going out for a run because you could taste the bread in the air.
Hey, I just got a message from somebody at your station, Jerry, WBAL, station that I haven't been on for a year.
By the way, I'll be on WBAL Friday, October 7th.
Yeah. So okay. So tomorrow or Friday. Yes.
So it's Friday and Sunday I'm on.
Oh, good to know. Well, I apparently just got a package at the station. So, actually,
well, you know what? I'm
sorry. There's some small amount of irony, Jerry, because I believe that today or tomorrow is the anniversary of my departure. That faithful day. Maybe tomorrow would be a good opportunity for me to come on with you.
Maybe. All right.
I'm
on 7 to 11 WBAL News Radio.
Oh, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I missed this before. For a second, I thought, oh my God, Jerry, they're putting you on. They're putting you on the C4. That would be great. And I'm going to be filling in on WMAL on Thanksgiving. I don't know about anything before then. So I got word of that yesterday.
I'm getting hungry, Andrew.
I know you are, Jerry. Believe me. So real quick, by the way, please keep watching the show. Keep listening. We're about to hit a major milestone in terms of our downloads, so we're very excited about that. Please leave reviews. Let your friends know what's going on. My other show, the Lunch Hour, the Federal Newswire Lunch Hour, episode 1 is up. If you haven't seen it, it's great. Episode 2 with Congressman Michael Cloud is going up. Next week, it's going to be me talking with Ilya Shapiro. And then, I may have a special guest in a couple of weeks. We're either going to, anyway, we'll tease that later on. Jerry, what do you want people to do?
Find the truth, plant your feet, and stand firm. God bless you.
Have a great week, everybody. Have fun, and please stay safe.